So today we're going to be talking about why abolishing the police is going to be bad for rioters and other groups that wish to harm people, harass people, and destroy property. Now, I actually saw this topic on another YouTube channel, but I thought as a almost 20-year police veteran, I would kind of weigh in with some insider knowledge. The first thing that violent rioters need to remember about abolishing the police is that we, the police, that when we use force against a bad guy, whether it's something as simple as wrestling a bad guy down that's trying to resist arrest, all the way up to shooting a bad guy that's presenting a deadly threat to the police officer, any type of force that we, the police, use against somebody, we have to remain within the Constitution. Now, I know right now some keyboard commandos are going to be pounding away on their keyboard saying about how we abuse our authority and we always stepping outside of the Constitution, but the reality is when we shoot a bad guy in self-defense, it usually gets assigned to an outside agency to investigate that shooting. And then the prosecutor also scrutinizes it. And then it's also not unusual for it to be presented to a grand jury. So every time we shoot somebody in self-defense, it really gets scrutinized. And if we go outside of the Constitution and outside of the law, then we get arrested and hammered for it. So the simple reality of it is for us to keep our jobs and for us to keep ourselves out of prison, when we use force, we do restrain ourselves. If we didn't, there would be a lot more dead bodies in the streets because of all the criminals that are in society right now. Oh, the joy of having property way far out in the country. That's actually one of my fellow prepping buddies that's shooting his gun probably a half-mile away from here on his property. Now, continuing with this subject, whenever a citizen uses deadly force against a bad guy to defend himself, we usually have to meet a high burden of proof before we could arrest that self-defender. Now, of course, it's different in liberal areas, but in other areas, we have to meet a high burden of proof before we could arrest that self-defender, meaning that we would actually have to find evidence that that self-defender was actually lying, that he actually wasn't defending himself, again, before we can make that arrest. But what I really want you to notice that it is typically the same areas that are wanting to abolish or defund the police. Those same areas are usually the same areas that hates self-defenders defending themselves with firearms against violent attackers. And I also want you to notice that it's those same areas that want to abolish the police and that hate self-defenders, those are also usually the same areas where the local prosecutor or the local DA will usually drop the charges against violent rioters. So what's actually happening in these areas where rioters are burning down businesses and terrorizing neighborhoods is once the local DA and the mayor tells the police to stand down and not to arrest the rioters, any cop knows that if he says, screw it, I'm still going to arrest those rioters, any cop knows that if he ends up having to use force against those rioters, that the charges will be dropped against the rioter and the local DA will actually file charges against that cop. So then what the cops do is they just stand in line and they just hope they just make it through the night, don't get injured, and they actually make it home uninjured. And in places where this is happening at, a lot of the good police officers are saying, you know what, heck with this, I'm leaving here, I'm going to lateral transfer to another police department in an area where they actually back their police officers, where they're not actually wanting to abolish or defund their police. And this is going to leave a vacuum that's going to be filled with people that should not be cops to begin with. So what's going to end up happening in these areas where they are hammering the cops, causing the police to leave those areas, when citizens actually start shooting violent rioters that are burning down houses and businesses and attacking neighborhoods, once citizens actually start fighting back, there's probably not going to be enough police to actually investigate that citizens' self-defense. Now, please do not get me wrong. I am not advocating violence of any kind. I only suggest that you legally protect yourself. All I'm doing in this video is saying what I foresee that's coming in these liberal cities that are really hammering their cops, causing their police officers to leave. I mean, you gotta think, once enough police officers leave these liberal cities and go work elsewhere, and the replacement cops that those liberal cities will hire will probably be the kind of cops that will just hide someplace because they won't want to do the job, then crime will become so high that you will probably have neighborhood watch groups that will probably start doing armed patrols around their neighborhoods to keep their homes from being broken into and burned down by rioters or what have you. So let's give some quick differences between police officers and armed neighborhood watch groups that will be patrolling neighborhoods once things get that bad. We, the police, again, have to stay within the Constitution or we get arrested. So when we stop a punk thug teenager and we're getting ready to arrest him for breaking into a business or vandalizing or whatever he's doing, we have to allow him his First Amendment rights. So while we're arresting him or detaining him and he's sitting there calling us every name in the book and everything like that, we have to let him sit there and spew that stuff off.
You think I'm playing, nigga? Go look my name up, nigga. Go look me up under mean mug, nigga.
What does that have to do with anything?
What's up? I'm telling you, ain't none of y'all able to touch me, nigga. I'll dog every last one of y'all niggas up in this bitch. No, hell no, y'all wanna grab me for no reason, nigga. Get the out my face. I'm telling you right now.
But I can guarantee you, once things get that ugly and people and neighborhoods do form those armed neighborhood watch groups that patrol those neighborhoods, if they stop a punk thug teenager and he starts rattling his mouth off at them and calling them every name in the book, there's probably going to be a lot more street justice exacted right there on the spot because these neighborhood watch groups will not put up with that punk. And then, for example, when we, the police, when we arrest a child molester or a child abuser, we can't beat them. We arrest them so they stand in front of a judge. But my gut feeling is that these armed neighborhood watch groups, if they get their hands on a molester, they probably won't adhere to the Fourth Amendment and to the Constitution as much with these child molesters as we, the police, do. And something else that these violent rioters need to take into consideration is that when it reaches that point, when it gets bad enough that neighborhoods have to start having armed patrols to protect their neighborhoods, when these violent rioters start attacking neighborhoods, trying to burn down houses and attack people, these armed neighborhood watch patrols, they will not respond with rubber bullets and tear gas like the police do. They will be responding with real bullets. Folks, it may end up taking several years for these cities to eventually abolish or completely defund their police department. And then even if they don't completely abolish their police departments, those same cities are hammering their good cops enough that a lot of those good cops are saying screw it, and they're just leaving that police department, which means that those liberal mayors and those appointed liberal police chief will replace the good cops that have left with liberal cops that won't hesitate to arrest you for defending yourself, no matter how justified your self-defense is. So folks, if you do live in an area that is flirting with the idea of abolishing or defunding your police, then I really highly suggest that you move from there while your property still has value. And then if you can't move from an area like that, then I really highly suggest that you belong to a legal self-defense association like the USCCA that will pay your bond and also free of charge provide you with an expert self-defense attorney that can fight for you in court when a local liberal DA tries to misconstrue the law to try to wrongfully convict you for legally defending yourself. And folks, whether you belong to the USCCA or belong to just another legal self-defense association, it doesn't matter to me, just as long as you belong to some type of legal self-defense association that will fight for you in court. Now, if you would like to check out the USCCA, I will put an affiliate link down below so you can check them out if you want to. So my personal belief is that once these violent rioters are no longer dealing with the police, but instead are dealing with armed citizens, they will realize just how restrained the police actually were, and they will actually wish for the police back instead of the angry armed citizens. So why don't you do me a favor and please comment down below, what are your thoughts on this subject? Do you think that once armed citizens have to start protecting their neighborhoods because all the cops have left or have been abolished, do you think that the rioters will wish for the police back? And to learn powerful insider knowledge of why there is a coming police apocalypse, and to learn what's coming to a city near you, then click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now to learn more about that. Hey folks, that's enough internet for today. It's time to go train. And folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.